Good evening, everybody. I'm Betsy Fischer Martin, the Executive Director of the Women in Politics Institute at American University. And welcome to our virtual series, Women on Wednesdays. Whether you are watching on Crowdcast or Facebook Live, we are glad that you could join us. To those of you new to one of our events, WPI is a nonprofit and nonpartisan institute in AU's School of Public Affairs that aims to close the gender gap in political leadership. And we offer academic and practical campaign training and facilitate research and discussions like this on women in politics and policy. And so this Sunday night, of course, is Oscar night in Hollywood, where there are two female nominees for Best Director this year, marking the first time that two women have been nominated in a single year. So tonight, we want to use the occasion to talk more broadly about women in film, how they're represented on camera, how they are influencing the industry off camera, and how so many in the creative arts community are really using their powerful voices to influence policy and politics. And we also want to talk about the impact that the Me Too and Time's Up movements have created in Hollywood, particularly for women in the TV and film industry, and get a sense as well as how the COVID pandemic has impacted the arts and production. So I know most of you have probably seen the hashtag around the right to bear arms, arts, okay? The right to bear arms. And the tagline that's going along with that, America needs the arts now more than ever. And so that's the advocacy work, or some of the advocacy work of the Creative Coalition. You may have also seen some recent PSAs featuring some big name celebrities like Morgan Freeman, encouraging people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And that's also the work of the Creative Coalition. So we are delighted to be able to spend some time tonight with the powerful woman who has been at the helm of this nonprofit and nonpartisan organization for over 20 years, the Creative Coalition CEO, Robin Bronk. So welcome, Robin.
Hi.
And we are also excited to have our first real Hollywood celebrity join Women on Wednesdays, SAG award-winning actress Alysia Reiner, who, of course, is best known as the villainous Warden Fig in all 7 seasons of Orange is the New Black. Someone I think we all love to hate. And we will hear from her about what she has been up to since the show wrapped almost 2 years ago, including her current role in FX's Better Things. And we'll talk to her about the other off-camera roles that she has, that of activist, producer, environmentalist, philanthropist, and of course, mother. So before we start, I want to let everybody know that we are going to save some time for questions. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll notice a button to ask a question. Please feel free to do so during the course of our discussion. And you'll also be able to upvote other people's questions that you are interested in. So hopefully everybody can have a chance to participate. And if you miss any of our discussion or you want to share this with friends, the replay of this will be available at the very same link that you used to register. So welcome, Robin and Alysia. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Betsy.
So Robin, I mentioned a couple of the big issues that the Creative Coalition is involved in, funding for the arts, and of course now vaccine awareness. For those folks who are not already familiar with the kind of things you do, can you just first give us a little bit more on the background of the Creative Coalition, who makes it up, and the kind of work that you all are doing in the policy arena?
Sure, and I love that it's called Women on Wednesdays so that I actually know what today is, which
exactly.
is kind of cloudy for the last year or so. Oh, I'm sure this is Wednesday. So as Betsy mentioned, I'm the CEO of the Creative Coalition, which is the nonprofit arm of the entertainment industry. We're a 501c3 nonprofit with members, and our members are actors, writers, producers, directors, and we use the word celebrity broadly. It cuts across different industries. We have a lot of members from the C-suite, and it's really for those in the entertainment industry who are doing well by doing good, and who understand that the entertainment industry provides sort of this platform, this superpower platform. And we were galvanized in the 1980s by Alec Baldwin and Susan Sarandon and Ron Silver and executives from the various cables and studios and networks to use this power judiciously and to use it to exponentially to maximize good for citizens. And we get involved in campaigns, as Betsy said, and Alicia's been very active in our campaigns. We've been very lucky about that. And she'll talk about herself. She's an activist who happens to be a spectacular actor as well. And that's who we are. We're activists who happen to be leaders in our fields. And our most recent campaigns will take on an issue. Our most recent campaigns are about a year and a half ago, took on the issue of obesity. Obesity as the last of this shame and blame disease, sort of like the way mental illness was treated before, in the last, before the perception of it changed in the last couple of years that it truly is a disease. We looked at another orphan disease, which is funny because it was the biggest epidemic before the pandemic, which is obesity. And we work with our writers, producers, directors, creatives to get into the zeitgeist that obesity is a disease. It should not be a shameful disease. It should not be a blamed disease. It's treated the way epilepsy probably was 100 years ago, where if someone said, well, if you're a better person and you had willpower, you wouldn't have seizures. And we know that's absurd. So what we do is we take that's just a case study is we take the power of the entertainment industry, a few moments on television on episodic, and we like to change the way people think for the good. And we were called in by the Yale School of Public Health to do a PSA campaign, a public service campaign. And we're doing PSAs, which were kicked off by the great actor Morgan Freeman. And we have a lot of other ones coming down the pike. And we want to go out of business on that one. We want to get everyone vaccinated and be done and move on to the next one. So that's what we do. We use our power for good.
That's great. And I want to come back to some of those areas as well. But let me ask you, Alysia, I mean, Robin mentioned the superpower platform, and I love in your official bio, it says you are someone who, quote, uses her superpowers for good. So tell us a little bit about what motivates you, the kind of issues that you use your superpowers to support, and sort of the scope of your activism and involvement in politics and policy.
Sure. My seminal moment that way was being a little kid on the couch and seeing Meryl Streep show up at Congress to talk about pesticides on apples. And I remember, because honestly, I felt like, oh, it's kind of selfish to be an artist. Like, that's my truth. As I was like, oh, I should help the world more. And I saw this woman change policy, and I was like, oh, you can be an actor and help change policy? That's so cool. I want to do that. So I always had it in my zeitgeist of desire to be an artist who got to tell amazing stories, change the world in that storytelling, but then also, how do I use my platform? And now there's a whole other meaning to platform. When I was a kid, there was not Instagram, but now we can have a platform, which is amazing. Anybody can have a platform. And I've had many agents and managers and PR people be like, can you just pick one thing to care about? Why do you have to care about everything? And I kind of am like, I care about everything. I care about the environment. I care about Black Lives Matter. I care about undocumented people. Like, I care about it all. And I will give my voice wherever it is needed, whenever I possibly can. And you were talking earlier about this time, and one of the gifts for me about COVID is in the early times, I wasn't on set. I, did get to work eventually, but in the early days, it was like, okay, I get to be a full-time activist. I've never had that opportunity. And I think that's part of how I live my life, is every moment is an opportunity. And you can either sit there and like, oh, poor me, I can't act right now. Or, oh, guess what I do get to do.
And so how do you sort of integrate the two? Because obviously you have this big platform, but then are you thinking about choosing roles that you feel can underscore and focus on it? And I know you formed a production company that.
No, I don't have a women. Actually, I work with different producers on different projects. as an actor, first of all, I feel insanely, outrageously, delightfully blessed that I've gotten the opportunity and offered to tell stories like Orange is the New Black, like Better Things, like The Deuce. I just did a secret project that I'm not allowed to talk about, but it's super feminist and anti-racist, and I'm so excited about it. So there's like the opportunity that's been offered to me, and I say thank you. And then there's the storytelling I do on my own. So my first movie that I produced actually was about grief and loss. I lost my dad really suddenly to cancer when he was 55, and it was 10 days. And I was amazed by people's inability to talk about grief and loss. So I partnered with the cancer support community, created a grief discussion guide that went with the film. It's now shown and used in hospitals and hospices and cancer support communities all over the country. So that was like my first foray into filmmaking. And then I made a film called Equity that went to Sundance, and that is really how I met Robin, because it won a Spotlight Award. Yay! And that was the first ever female-driven Wall Street movie. So for me, a lot of the activism I do is around equality for women. And so that was a piece of that. The second movie that I produced was called Egg, which premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival and is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. You can see both of them on iTunes. You can rent them both. And that one was exploring choices in motherhood and what does it mean to be mother. I think it's even more topical in this moment, having been home, and so many women have lost work much more than men because of the pandemic. I don't know if you know the statistic, but 140,000 women were out of work in December. Like 100% unemployment for higher women than men, which is pretty nutty. And then I'm in development right now. I have a couple of other pieces I love to tell stories that make change. So the one that I'm working on right now is called Flat. And it is unlikely buddy comedy between a boy, an 8th grade science student, and a NBA player who thinks the earth is flat. And it's an awesome story about their relationship and about the power of science, but it's also really about how science is racist and how we need to talk about that. We've never really talked about that. So it's a family film. It's really funny. It's really awesome. We just attached an amazing director, and I'm really excited about it.
Okay, so now we have a lot of new shows to watch. So thank you for that. So Robin, back to your example of kind of working about the issue of obesity. Take us through a little bit of that, of like how you talk to writers and the kind of impact that you were able to have on an issue like that, so that it kind of gets into different scripts. And so the power of that and influencing and changing how we perceive different things on film, and just talk about how that process works with you kind of making that difference in the writers' rooms.
Absolutely. But Alysia is a friend and colleague, and my moment was Meryl Streep's Al too.
Oh, wow.
I can't believe that you just. So I was a little older. So I was an intern on Capitol Hill when she was testifying. I'm like, put together Hollywood and politics, and we can make change. I can't believe that we had the same moment. We have to tell Meryl, I'm sure.
Yeah. But so Robin, I mean, just back up a little bit on that too. I mean, you worked in Washington for so long and had a career in policy and politics, and had parlayed that into this whole new world of Hollywood, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, my story's a little bit funny. So I had that Meryl Streep's moment. We were both watching that testimony at the same time. And so I went on and I worked I ended up being a lobbyist and strategist for APCO Worldwide in DC. And at the time it was like APCO block, we're a block long. because I was the 7th employee, and now it's in 70 countries. But but I actually, my story coming to the Creative Coalition, I guess it works with working women. So I had a meeting. I was having my 3rd daughter. I had a meeting in the White House with President Clinton. And it was my first Oval Office meeting, and I was pretty excited about it. I was supposed to have the baby the next day, and he was late for the meeting. He was about several hours late, but I'm not gonna like leave. And I went into labor in the Oval Office while I was waiting for him. And so, but anyway, so I get to, so then he does tell me, he says he's a lot of, trouble with rumor control, and I probably should get to the hospital. So I went from there to GW. And at that moment, Billy Baldwin, who was on the board of the Creative Coalition at the time, called with a bunch of board members saying, hey, you were recommended, Hollywood and politics. And again, because I'm having my 3rd baby, you're kind of just, all right, everything's there. Let me just take the call. And that's why I ended up at the Creative Coalition. But anyway, but the other thing, Alysia, you didn't mention is being an activist who is also an actor is very brave, because there are always going to be fans that don't agree with you. And so these actors that put themselves out for, the thing that just grinds my teeth is that when people say, oh, they're just doing it for the publicity. Right. And it's like the Antichrist. I'm sure that your agents hate when you do it, because when Alysia is doing her activist work, she's taking up time that she, making money. She's definitely taking on an issue that some people who love your acting will be against. And so it's quite the brave decision as a fellow working parent. So I salute you on that. But I don't even remember your question, Betsy.
Well, I just wanted to know a little bit about the process of you working, directly with writers that are getting either storylines or, issues in front of people, and sort of how that actually works on a practical level.
Well, it's interesting. So sometimes issues come to us, and from our membership, it bubbles up, and other times we're keeping up with current events as we do, with COVID, and we need to do something. We have a deep bench of celebrity. What can we do to support the common good? And with obesity, it was interesting. I was teaching. I've produced a couple movies, and again, it's not my day job. It's not, I don't pretend to do that, but I have done some documentaries, and I was teaching a course at Hunter College in New York City on documentary making. And I was talking to the kids about, when you're looking for a subject for your documentary, don't look at what's on the first page of the website or the newspaper, whatever outlet. You have to find that little tiny story that no one's paying attention to. And I was going through this demonstration, and I saw this little tiny story about the statistics on obesity, that it affects, as a disease, 4 out of 10 Americans. And no one talks about it. And it's whispered. We avert our eyes. It's the only disease that people don't rejoice when one is getting treatment for it. It's a shameful thing.
I'll just jump in. Like, part of the way the Creative Coalition works is it's very organic. So, like, Robin was sharing that with me. I have this script about science. There's a grandma in it, and she has diabetes. And I was like, it would be really interesting if she's also obese, so that we talk about that relationship between diabetes and obesity and liver fail, and what happens to the body. As if we're gonna be a science movie, we should go there a little bit, and it was very organic to then decide, like, okay, let's make her obese, because that then tells an important piece of a story that I didn't really think about until I had that conversation with Robin. So I think part of it is very organic. I work with 2 really spectacular organizations, both Planned Parenthood and NIRH, which is the National Institute of Reproductive Health. And both of them are always working with writers to help them tell stories that need to be told, be it about abortion or birth control, or how do we get these stories out? I work with the Gina Davis Institute, and we're, part of the thing that we talk about to studios there is making sure even with the extras that it's 50-50 men and women, because in fact, if you're watching a movie and 77% of the characters are male, even the extras, as a woman, you feel like a minority. You unconsciously get the story from your story that you're a minority. Just like why it's one of the reasons Bridgerton is so deeply important is because it's the first time we're seeing that. And it's ridiculous that it took till 2021 to be there.
It is crazy when you think, so play on that. So our people who join the Creative Coalition, who are members of the Creative Coalition, honestly, they get it. She hears about an issue that we're doing, and she's like, okay, how do I fold it in? Because you understand that that platform of 1 minute on the screen can change millions of lives. So with obesity, so what we've started to do is we partnered with different patient groups and learned about it. And we are not substance people, and I say that proudly. We're process people. And so we depend on the substance people to partner with us. So we partner with a lot of substance organizations on this, and took it to writers. And for example, there's a great episode of New Amsterdam that uses one of our patients' stories. That we brought them the patient. We brought the patient to their writer's room, and they created the story around it. And now one of their characters has this disease of obesity and has a whole arc this season. And it's an obesity, and again, as an example, you're not, what we want to get is that you're not alone, that you're legitimate. And again, if we look back, in time, it maybe was how epilepsy was treated 150 years ago. If you had willpower, you wouldn't have seizures, or mental illness. If you just smile, you'd be fine. And hopefully we'll look back on this time and think how absurd that we thought that obesity was a choice. And people just smiled, it would be better.
Alysia, you mentioned the Gina Davis Institute. I know they've done a lot of research about how women are portrayed, especially, maybe the non-20-something women, so women that are older. And, the fact that, only a quarter, I think, of, characters age 50 or older, and some of the highest grossing films are women. I guess I just was curious of your thought about how older women are portrayed, or strong, powerful women in film, and what are your thoughts on that topic?
I think I'm a Pollyanna, and I believe in change. I think when you're an activist, it's because you believe change is possible.
Right.
So yes, in the past, has it been horrific? Have we never, basically women fall off the face of the earth at 50 in the past. And you see, unless all of a sudden they're a grandmother and you never see their sexuality, or you see their their complexity, they just all of a sudden become the matriarch, right? And I do believe that that's changing in massive, massive, beautiful, explosive ways. I think one of the biggest things we need is more females telling the story, right? So more women behind the camera who will tell the right story.
Right.
And
we have to make sure that we as women and the men around us are not bystanders of it. That's the thing that we learn in the Creative Coalition and through advocacy. You just can't stop. You have to keep the heat on. It's not going to go away. And that's what we are, you might win the battles, but the war is a long way.
That's exactly it. And you need allies. That's the beauty of the Creative Coalition, or Gina Davis, is I find my people and we work together and we change this together.
You want to hear something? Wait, I'll tell you between us. Do you know, I bet you don't know this, Gina Davis played me on TV. There was a show.
Really?
There was a show called The Gina Davis Show.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so a friend of a friend, so she'd always see me at the Creative Coalition. So she was head of the Creative Caucus. And she had 3 kids like me, and was balancing the whole thing of working kids. I always say that the show never got like a 2nd or 3rd season because no one could look like Gina Davis and do my job. So, that's politically incorrect. But yeah, that's how I got to know her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Alysia, you were also a founding member of Time's Up, and so can you talk a little bit about, speaking about keeping momentum up, that's, believe it or not, I mean, it's been almost probably 3 years, right? Mm-hmm. What is your, just over the arc of that time, have you seen the impact of that organization, and then, how that's evolved and the momentum that maybe is building with that or needs to build? I don't know if it's there or not.
We are using our voice. So there's a couple of different facets to Time's Up. I'm now on the global advisory board there. So it's one of the pieces is the Me Too of it all and the sexual harassment of it all.
Right.
But that's just one piece. That's part of what Legal Defense Fund does. So all monies that go there go to defending sexual harassment cases. However, as an entity, we are looking at equality in the workplace globally. So if that's in the music industry, where we've had some big voice lately, be it in science, be it in publishing, how do we expose the inequalities across all careers, not just Hollywood at all? And this moment, it's all about the care economy and the importance of recognizing what COVID has done to America and to the world, really, and how the weight of childcare and home care tends to fall on women, and then their load as workers in the world and in the workplace and in the home is deeply, deeply unequal and so our work right now is really about how do we change that? How do we create more of a care economy with, we are more specific right now to America and looking at the Biden administration and how do we include that in policy?
And then also talking about just, diversity in general. I mean, they were in the news a couple of weeks ago with Tina Chen, sending out this open letter to the Globes, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, saying, wait a something's wrong here. There are 0 diverse members of your, almost 100-member organization, and this kind of thing can't stand.
And
what I think is great is that we aren't, and I said this, we're not averting our eyes anymore.
Right.
We are looking diversity, inclusion. We're looking at it in the face, and I love that because we did have a period of time in our history and country where we would rise up, and then it would flatten. And I think now that we're not, we don't let it go. And I think it's something great.
Yeah, I agree.
Alysia also mentioned COVID. So I wanted to ask you, Robin, just in general, as someone involved in the industry, how has, the pandemic, how are the arts kind of coming back from that? I know there was some inclusion that you all, certainly fought for, and some of the COVID relief for the arts community, and then also for small businesses, production businesses impacted, and sort of what do you see as the outlook for the industry at large?
Well, I mean, Alysia, you could even probably speak better to this because you've been on the sets, but I do want to say the entertainment industry is a case study of how one can work in this COVID environment in the work. I mean, what has been accomplished in being able to keep work going and putting in what what you need. It just seems amazing. I mean, you've been on sets, but what I've seen, it just seems pretty amazing.
it's been very interesting to look at both Broadway and Hollywood and how they've been handled it differently. And the one thing that I will say is basically on every set, there's now a health and safety department, which adds 30 to 40% to the budget. So the only productions that are happening are productions with a lot of money. Like productions without a lot of money just can't happen right now. Which is unfortunate for those tiny indies, you know?
Right.
They've all been grounded. And also, like, I'll be honest, early on in the pandemic, I was offered indies where they were like, oh yeah, we can do it. And I was like, I'm not risking my life if I don't know that you have the money.
Exactly.
To test. Like, you know, when I was on the show that I was on, they tested me 3 times a week. The minute I got the job, someone came to my house and tested me. And you need that kind of protocol. You need the health and safety department on set every day, making sure that everybody is double masked, because as an actor, if you're taking off your mask, it's really scary and you need to feel safe. The one thing that I will say that I've been pushing for, both with SAG-AFTRA and with Time's Up, is we now have that health and safety department on set. And I had the idea of, as long as we have that, God willing, the pandemic will be over and COVID will be over. But why not keep that department and use it as a way to talk about sexual harassment? Like that's health and safety issue, mental health, like that's a health and safety issue, bullying, that's a health and safety issue. Like we have this department now, let's use this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it has been, I think, you know, not to be a Pollyanna about it, but I look at other industries, because now I know way too, because we're doing this PSA campaign in conjunction with the CDC and NIH and Yale. So I know way too much. I want to be one of them. I'm more on the things it's all going to go away. But it's a great case study of, you know, and I think the entertainment industry, you know, yes, it takes, you know, I've seen the figure of 37% more at least to have the COVID safety measures in place. But on the other side of it, the entertainment industry, I love the way my industry has pivoted in a second. I mean, if you go back to a year ago, March, within the first week, we were doing Zoom readings. We understood Zoom. We started to understand it. I mean, that's creativity. And, you know, and it's working around. And the pandemic did not stop the arts. The arts actually saved us from ourselves, which I just think is pretty awesome.
Yeah. And then hopefully we can get back to being in theaters or musical performances, right? Because
I mean, the good thing is you have the most creative minds in the world, on the globe, working on this. So hopefully there will be workarounds.
And I will say, in the world of activism married with art, which I'm part of a chorus called the Resistance Revival Chorus, and we sing as an act of protest, because joy is an act of resistance. And so we will, you know, we sang this past weekend at 51 for 51, which is all about making sure that those who live in DC are represented in the Senate. And we, you know, I've sang at many abortion rights protests. I've sang for Black Lives Matter. I've sang, and we have an album you can look up, like resistancerevivalchorus.com. And it's an extraordinary way to express ourselves and to use joy and art as a way to educate. You know, one of the songs we sang this past weekend was about voting rights and that everybody deserves the right to vote. And it's a song by Sweet Honey and the Rock, and using those opportunities and using art in this joyful way to educate is really what the Creative Coalition is all about.
It's crazy that we live in this country that still does not value art, and it's not even that much of a red issue or blue issue. And I get it. I live here. I have all the life and death issues too that we all face. But you know, it's if you, even if you don't believe in art for art's sake, okay, it's an economic driver. it saved us mentally in the last year and change. What saved us? What is the common denominator? Is that we had the arts.
No, it's a good point. I'm going to get to some questions in just a minute. So please, I encourage everybody to submit a question. But I wanted to ask you also, Alysia, because I saw a tweet from you the other day about an interview that you gave for a new book that was written by a friend of yours called The Rejection That Changed My Life.
Wait, yeah. Please get it. It's so good.
I was fascinated by it because I do think, obviously, actors and actresses, I mean, you have to cope with rejection after rejection after rejection, right? And I know you probably have some good lessons on that. And I just think for women, you know, even involved in politics, rejection is a part of it. You know, you have to pull yourself back up and run again, or, you know, even in our own professional career. So I'm just curious what your wisdom was on, you know, rejection.
I have a couple things to say about rejection and mistakes. And the biggest thing is just keep on getting up. I do feel in general, men brush shit off more. It's just the two things that I will say that I think are true of my industry and politics are men brush it off so easy, and women will like think about it till 2 o'clock in the morning. And women will be like, oh, I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
And men are like, I'm the bomb. I can do anything. And particularly around politics, I think it's really important that we change that perception. A, we're all so qualified. And B, we need to see women as more qualified. That's the other piece of it is like, I feel like, sadly, if we put a man and a woman next to each other who had the exact same qualifications, we would choose the guy politically because we're used to it. And that's what we're used to. And there's a lot of history there. And we need to break our unconscious bias and take the risk and follow the woman.
I would like to see, because, you know, we all talk about the Cinderella complex. I would love to see a Prince Charming complex.
Yeah. It doesn't exist.
Maybe we'll make that movie.
Yeah. And how do you handle rejection?
I have a couple, you know, my two things is it is about shedding. I had a fabulous acting teacher once who early in my career is like, your job is to shed. It's your job. You have to shed everything. You have to shed the like work through the bullshit of your childhood and shed it. You cannot bring your childhood to your job. You have to shed like everything bad that ever happened to you. You have to shed. You have to be like free and be it because I'm a vessel. That's my job. And he used this beautiful metaphor that I think is true of anything. Like if you show up at a job interview with luggage and turn to the person who's interviewing you and are like, here, hold my luggage while we have this interview. Nobody wants to hold your luggage. And if you show up at a job interview with like, oh, this bad thing happened at that last job and my childhood and excuses and all of it, it's not going to work out well for you in my personal experience. So shed your baggage. It's, you know, find the way, find your tools to shed your baggage. That's like number one. The other piece I talk about and I talk about in the book is there is no such thing as rejection. There isn't. You learn this very slowly as an actor. It's like, look, my hair's short now. Maybe they wanted someone with long hair, right? But it's not personal. And what I have to think, it's like it's a long game. Your career, any career is a long game. And you want to play the long game. So you may not get a particular job, but you've met somebody. They've seen your work. They've seen if in the case of politics, they've seen you give a speech or they've seen your resume, or now it's a new contact. It's a new person who could be thinking about you for the future. Stay in contact with them. You know, my story in the book is that I had auditioned for the casting director many, many, many times before I got Orange. And I had been rejected many, many, many times, or I just wasn't right for past roles. And in fact, with Orange, I auditioned for 4 different roles on Orange before I got Fig. And Fig, they just offered me because they kept on being like, oh, we really like her. We want to put her somewhere. We just don't know. And they finally found the character, and then they wrote for me for 7 years, which was incredible.
That's great. Great story. Okay, I'm going to go to some questions. Let's see. Here's a question from Julie. She says, are you happy with the way that women have been portrayed in elected office on TV and film, like Madam Secretary or Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Veep or Annette Bening, others? I guess either one of you, what are your thoughts on sort of women being portrayed?
I mean, I love Julia and Veep. I love that. I just loved her, and I love the whole cast. I mean, it goes back to what's interesting also is this celebrity advocacy in the connect between Hollywood and politics. Yes, I had that Meryl Streep moment, and then I started looking into it. It goes back to Joan Crawford. Mm-hmm. Joan Crawford was the first celebrity lobbyist, and she lobbied for Pepsi because she was married to the guy. But I think, listen, it's come a long way.
Yeah.
In the years, and the thing I loved about West Wing was I was in DC at the time, and that was like my catnip, and I loved it whenever we would. And I was doing this celebrity advocacy stuff for APCO, but when I brought someone from West Wing on Capitol Hill for something, and every elevator operator, every member of Congress said, "Oh, that's patterned after me." So I love it. I love that. But West Wing was talking about the debt ceiling and this and that, and it played in Kansas, which I thought was so great because it made this thing of Capitol Hill understandable and accessible. And even with House of Cards, yes, things obviously were exaggerated in all of these, but it had, again, as somebody who really believes in citizenship education and getting involved in the process through television, through the power of television, everyone around the country, didn't matter how rural you were or how much you were in the city, had this access to a little window of politics.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would just say, I don't care how they're portrayed as long as there's more women in politics on the screen. Like, we can't go wrong as long as they're there, because no matter how they're portrayed, good or bad, they're human and they're there. And that's the most important part.
Yeah, that's a good point. Here's a question from Sydney. She says, are there any specific issues related to gender parity or women's empowerment, et cetera, that you would like to see Hollywood tackle in the coming months and years?
Yeah, care. I think childcare, that's the biggest one. Yeah.
Also, what else is interesting? Because I was looking at, I was looking at the statistics that came out earlier this year about how many women had lost their job, and how, when you talk about care too, it's in caregiving. Yeah. There's not a whole lot. I mean, women dominate in that field, and there's
from young children to, caring for older parents too, right?
I was thinking about it, that there has not been a whole lot of portrayals.
Yeah, it's sort of children appear kind of when they need to in a film, right, or in a TV series, right?
Think about it, that like you think about the TV show The Nanny, or Mrs. Doubtfire, right? And it's very light and comic. The truth is, like, so many humans couldn't live without their childcare.
Right.
And I would love, and personally, I would also love to see, we're now seeing more women in positions of power, as CEOs and in the C-suite. But, not all women are ruthless, and it's kind of, there's not so much Cruella.
It's not all Devil Wears Prada kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and I would love to see that fair and balanced.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see. Here's a question from Caitlin. She says, women have started to challenge norms in Hollywood, but there's still a long way to go, especially in how women are represented, or even how many shows or movies can pass Bechdel test. Are there certain steps that you hope will be enacted to continue promoting gender parity and racial parity in Hollywood?
I think there is a lot going on. And I think actually our job is to talk about the good stuff, not the bad stuff. Like, I think one of the things that being an activist means to me and working with the Creative Coalition is we have to stop asking these questions and talking about these things. And just like, if you're interested in that, go join the Gina Davis Institute, go join, be a supporter of Film Fatales, be a supporter of the like New York Film and Television or LA Film and Television or wherever you are there, Film and Television. The biggest thing, this, when I was at Sundance, I gave a speech and I talked about this, like the biggest thing we can do as women is support the storytelling of other women. So when there's something written by a woman, directed by a woman, has a great portrayal of women, passes the Bechdel test, tell everybody you know about it.
Right.
Go buy that thing. It's just like using your dollar about anything. When you buy wine, buy the female winemaker. When you're choosing between two kinds of tofu, figure out who made your tofu.
Right.
We all make thoughtful decisions on, is this company, are they environmentally sound? Are they, you're absolutely right. We should have a report card and a litmus test on women and diversity. And we don't. I think, we all have we have this cachet of this generation. We have this cachet that no other generation had. We all have social media platforms. All have so many ways of communicating, but I haven't thought about it, Alysia, but we should do that because we should create something that is a checklist.
I know that Gina Davis is doing something like that, so I think it would be fun to collaborate with them as a way to get it out there, because your platform is, it's a very big platform, so I think they would.
We create mountains out of molehills. We're really good at that.
But that can sort of span, a lot of different spectrums of only buying stock in companies that have women on their board of directors, or right. You can be an activist and I know, Robin, you've talked about sort of the power of women as consumers, right? And if we don't like something, we shouldn't be supporting it or watching it, right?
Yeah, again, as a former lobbyist, as I like to say, an educator, before lobbying became a little bit of a dirty word. But you have to look into the company that you're supporting, that you're working for, and it's not a lot of digging in it. It's very easy to do it. And so the same way you have conviction, most of us have conviction of what we're putting into our bodies, what we're eating. Have that conviction of purpose in what you're supporting.
Here's a question from Isabel, who's asking about the differences in the streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. She says seem to have made a deeper crack in the glass ceiling for women as creative directors, producers, kind of redefining, whose stories are told, a lot of the topics that we've talked about. And she says, what enables streaming services to kind of be a better medium for storytelling about women as opposed to sort of the old school network television or major film studios?
I'm curious what you'll say, Robin. My guess is it's just about money.
Yeah.
That the old school network television have a model that is old.
Yeah.
It's called show business.
Yeah, honestly, exactly.
It's called show business. It's not show art. Again, support support it, support the shows that you like, that you believe in. It's funny, I thought you were going to say someone was going to ask how to get from one streamer to the other. I was like,
That was me.
yeah. But it is, and you look at, it's funny because people say, oh, that, when you go to pitch, and Alysia, I know you do this, oh, that's a network show.
Yeah.
That's a cable show. And there's definitely, listen, there is a demographic of the consumer, and show business, they care about their consumer. They have to. That's how they stay in business.
Yeah, I mean, it's about eyeballs and revenue. I mean, not dissimilar from the news business in many ways too, right?
Well, yeah, and it's interesting that's y'all interview, but we grew up with the news being the fourth estate, and now it's entertainment. Is it,
Yeah.
Where is it? And you certainly had to deal with that in your past life.
Yeah. One more question from Isabel. She says, what are the TV shows and films that first gave you hope that women's stories could be told authentically from their own perspective?
My favorite right in this moment is I Will Destroy You. And if you read the story of that, she actually turned down the opportunity to make that at another streamer because they wouldn't give her the creative control that she wanted. So she had like a bird in the hand and zero in the bush. She had no idea. And she said, nope, I'm going to wait till I have creative control over this. And I think it's an extraordinary piece of art and storytelling that we don't usually get to tell. I think, not that I'm biased, but Better Things, which is written, directed, produced, and stars Pamela Adlon, who has been in the business since she was a small child and created this spectacular piece, really, which is a love letter to being an imperfect, messy, loving, spectacular mother and worker in the world. Like, she's a perfect example of like trying to juggle being a mother, being a daughter, taking care of both her children and her mother, and working. So an Orange, I'm so lucky that I got to be part of those stories and that they're female driven. And I so want to sing to the rafters about the project I'm about to do and how female driven it is, but I'm not allowed to talk about it yet.
All right. Well, you're going to come back and talk to us about that.
I was even going to say also, even Nomadland.
Yeah.
Strong women in there, and what it took to get that done. And
I have to shout out to my friend Molly Asher who produced that.
Oh yeah.
Incredible woman. Yeah.
It's the whole story behind the story is incredible.
Always amazing. I mean, obviously Frances McDormand is amazing.
Amazing.
And you can't walk away with that without thinking, what would I do?
Yeah.
How? And that's beautiful art when it can, it engenders what would I do. And and I just want to shout out for Better Things and Alicia's character on Better Things, and that if you're gonna watch one series, make it Better Things. It's
now at the top of my list.
It is everything. If you are a human being on the planet, it will speak to you.
I'm always shocked by men who stop me in the street and love it,
And what is your character?
I'm her best friend.
Okay.
But it's up.
So Nomadland is one of the nominees for Best Picture.
Also, Promising Young Women.
Promising Young Women, right.
And
so do you guys have a favorite or a wager on who
those two?
Those two?
I can't. I mean, I can't.
Yeah.
I kind of want Chloe because she, that it would not only be the first woman, but the first non-white woman. So I'm a little biased that way, but they're two very extraordinary pieces of art that are so different. The way they tell stories are so different, but they're equally brilliant.
Yeah,
well, I think I just need to park myself in front of a TV screen for the next couple of weeks. But look, thank you both for this really informative discussion. I really, really appreciate your time and sharing your perspective and your background and some of your great stories. So thanks to the both of you. I do want to let everybody know about some upcoming Women on Wednesdays that we have, which we hope you'll join us for. May 12th, we are having Karen Tumulty, who's a reporter with the Washington Post, who has just written a really great new book about Nancy Reagan. It's sort of the good and the bad. And that will be on May 12th. And then also on May 19th, we have former Congresswoman Jane Harman to talk about women in national security and a new book that she has written on national security. So that'll be on May 19th. And you can register on our Crowdcast page. You can find the link probably at the top of your screen now and sign up for those. And we hope we will see you then. But Robin and Alysia, thanks again for being with us. And thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you. This was great.
Take care.
Bye.